I was planning to talk more about why I think it's important that I, as a Black woman, identify as sex positive. But then I saw the following quote that I'm about to say. I saw this quote show up on my Facebook feed by a Black feminist that I follow. So I think I need to probably go over some things in regard to sex positive feminism now. The quote reads, "The problem with the new wave of feminism is that it's not empowering to be a sex worker. It's not empowering to make money on a pole. It's not empowering to twerk for attention. But that's the rallying call of feminists to proclaim that getting paid for being objectified somehow negates the fact that they are conforming to a patriarchal, capitalist, sexist system that says that a woman's value is between her legs. There should be a feminism that works to say that women can be sexual without being shamed, but there isn't. Feminism has become about feigning indignation anytime someone says that women being sex objects is detrimental and counterproductive to our true emancipation as women." Okay, so I've got a couple questions. I've definitely got some problems with a quote like this. Now, why would this person assume or assert that being sex positive, um, expressions of sexuality and sex work in all its forms are inherently wrong or giving an accurate measure of a woman's worth? I mean, isn't that the sign of really doing patriarchy's work for it? Why assume that all women who twerk do it for the male gaze and not for themselves, because they like to do it. They like to dance. They're body positive. They love their bodies. They love the way their bodies move. They like to dance, period. Why assume that it's always for the attention of men? Why even resign women who engage in sex work to the label of being a sex object? Does a woman relinquish her agency every time she puts on 5-inch heels and a G-string? That really sounds like something I'd expect a misogynist to say. So why do I see a lot of feminists perpetuating these patriarchal concepts when it comes to sex work and sex workers and twerking? Now, I think I said this before in my first video on being sex positive, but I guess I'll have to reiterate and say it again. Now, sex work itself is not inherently bad. It doesn't inherently mean the selling of bodies. It's the sale of a service. Most times, sexual expressions and fulfillment of desires via a performance, whether it's a dance or sex for sale, intercourse. The bodies of women who do these things, the strippers, the exotic dancers, the burlesque dancers, and, the call girls and escorts, their bodies still belong to them. They still have agency. They still have choice. So they are not sex objects. If you want to hold anybody responsible for objectification or for trying to disempower these people, then you should hold the people who do the objectifying and the dispowering responsible for what they're doing. But don't villainize the sex workers for just, doing their job. They're providing a service. Hold society responsible for the way that it exploits people via capitalism, whether that means holding capitalism responsible for the type of system that it is, or maybe trying to look for some sort of way to reform it, being that especially in our society in the States, where we're supposed to be sort of a capitalist socialist hybrid, in recent years we really have moved much, much further to the side of capitalism than, socialism or whatever. So, I mean, hold the people accountable who exploit people. Don't hold the workers responsible. Don't villainize them for just doing what they do. It's not their fault that they are employed by people who choose to exploit them. And it's not their fault that they run into people while doing their job who um, go out of their way to disempower them. That's more of a function of a person who is sexist, who is misogynist, who thinks that just because a woman is doing a thing sexually, that means that she has no power and that she is always has to be available to him sexually, and that's not the case. So sex work itself is not inherently exploitative or wrong. So again, don't ascribe a value to the work that sex workers do. Don't continue to perpetuate the stigma that comes with sex work and villainize sex workers and try to hide it behind some feigned concern for the person's well-being. That's just being dishonest. You can't say in one breath that like you hate respectability politics within like racial discourse and then engage in respectability politics via perpetuating the stigmas on sex work and condemning sex positive feminism, sex workers, and twerking within the same breath. You can't do that. It's hypocrisy. There are very legitimate concerns when it comes to sex positive feminism that I'm aware of, more specifically when it comes to how it's handled via white mainstream feminism. As we've seen with groups like Femin and the group who created Slut Walk, there were issues of white mainstream feminism wanting to push this agenda, and expecting everyone else to just go with the program without considering the experiences and feelings and cultures of women of color, specifically Black women. I know for me, when it came to Slut Walk, at first I was pretty somewhat on board with it, because while I do think that oppressed groups have the right to take a pejorative that's used against them and try to make it into something positive, the word, for me as a Black woman, the word slut really can't be redeemed because it's never been used for anything else but to dehumanize Black women and shame Black women for attempting to express ourselves sexually as freely as men are allowed to by society. It's like, but at the same, we're called sluts, but at the same time, we're expected to be sexually available to men at all times. So campaigns like that aren't intersectional are not campaigns that I personally will have anything to do with. So, and I also don't subscribe to the happy hooker mentality in regards to me supporting sex work and supporting, efforts for it to be legalized. I'm for sex work by adults who consent to that line of work. I am not supportive of sex work being done by people who have been trafficked or who are coerced and forced into doing the work. I also don't think that every person who engages in sex work ever are victims of trafficking. There's a difference. You have to come at this with context and nuance, and I really think that a lot of feminists fail to do that whenever it comes to sex or sex work, period. It also seems like when women artists put out certain types of work, whether or not they announce themselves as feminists, it seems that like it gets a lot of feminists in their feelings and they demonize them for their sexual expression. Now, Beyonce has been the forefront at the forefront of receiving criticism, not just from white mainstream feminism for releasing her self-titled album, but she's been also catching it from a lot of black feminists too. And Nicki Minaj's Anaconda video has come under fire as well. Now, as far as I know, Nicki Minaj has never come out and said that she was a feminist. She might talk about double standards in regards to being a woman in a field that is for the most part, still dominated by men, but she's never came out and said, I'm a feminist. So, so I wouldn't put that label on her. Plus, if I remember correctly, she's expressed, some anti-black sentiments. So I don't really give her that much country. But I won't dismiss the significance of the video for Anaconda, especially, given that she uses the sample of Baby Got Back from Sir Mix-a-Lot. And the use of that sample, along with having the type of women that she had in the video, how they were dressed, how they danced, it pretty much was pushing the same message that Sir Mix-a-Lot's video was pushing at the time when that video was out. It challenged the white cisnormative standard of physical beauty and sexual respectability. And I think as Black women, it's important that we challenge those constructs daily and take back our sexuality. Celebrate in it for ourselves and not throw it away or keep it separate from our feminism or our womanism, just because it's used to perpetuate the myth of Black female hypersexuality. It's not for us, or any oppressed group, to prove others wrong about stereotypes that weren't created by us in the first place, which is the position of respectability. If Black feminists and womanists don't tolerate respectability politics within racial discourse, why perpetuate it within feminist discourse? Why? So in closing, I would ask my fellow feminists, especially my fellow Black feminists, to seriously look within themselves to see why they have such a problem, not just with sex-positive feminism, but with sex work in and of itself. And make sure that you aren't doing patriarchy's handwork by perpetuating patriarchal concepts, especially the one where it says that sex what women do between their legs dictates their value.